The CBC will stop using Twitter in a dispute over how its account is described on the social media platform. The broadcaster says it's pausing its activities on all of its accounts a day after its main account was labeled government-funded media. CBC says its journalism is impartial and independent, and to suggest otherwise is untrue. Twitter defines government-funded media as outlets where the government provides some or all of the outlet's funding. CBC is publicly funded through a parliamentary appropriation that is voted upon by all MPs, and its editorial independence is protected by law in the Broadcasting Act. For more on this, we are joined live tonight by Cecil Rosner, Vice President of the Canadian Association of Journalists. Thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Hi, good evening.
You've worked for the public broadcaster. I want to start by getting your reaction to Twitter slapping this government-funded media label on the CBC's account. What's running through your mind tonight?
I have to say, I think it's both arrogant and ignorant on Twitter's part to do that. Arrogant because they didn't do any consultation. According to this statement from CBC, there was no prior consultation. Ignorant, I would say, also because they don't really have an understanding of how government funds media outlets in Canada. Yes, CBC gets about 70% or so of its funding from government, but there are hundreds of media outlets that give some level of government funding in Canada, and I don't see all of them being labeled as government-funded media. And I don't think Elon Musk and Twitter really have a very good understanding of how Canada works or how government funding of anything in Canada works.
You talked about Elon Musk, and you talked about how you consider this to be arrogant and ignorant, but there are leaders in this country, like Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, of course, who is campaigning on defunding the CBC and celebrating this decision, saying on Twitter that now people know that this is Justin Trudeau propaganda, not news. How do you respond to political party leaders saying this sort of stuff?
You know, I think different political party leaders have realized that they can gain some support amongst their base by bashing the CBC. That's not new. It's been going on for quite a long time. I think people have to look seriously, though, at what does it mean to say something is government funded? Does that make it in itself bad? Lots of things in Canada are funded by the government, from highways and hospitals to all kinds of media outlets and magazines and newspapers. I think the implication here is that on the part of some politicians, that because government is involved, therefore something bad or nefarious is going on. And I think that in itself is very dangerous. And any politician that suggests that is engaging in something that's quite dangerous. So I think people need to, on the one hand, it's a good thing for people to be media literates, to understand who funds different organizations. So understanding that CBC is partially funded by government is good, but that certainly doesn't tell the whole picture about its editorial independence or other things that we need to know about media outlets.
Right, you talked about the dangers of this kind of rhetoric. I want to stay with that for a moment. In the age of misinformation and disinformation, what do you think a move like this means for journalism and democracy?
I think it's very dangerous for private owners of social media platforms to give themselves the right to label things. Like who gives Twitter the right to label anything? Why should we accept labels that they seek to put on things? You only have to look at what they did with the BBC, where they changed their mind like 2 or 3 times within the space of a week to understand that it's not very well thought out. And so I think CBC is quite justified in saying, we're going to take a pause. Maybe we will get off the platform altogether. And that's something NPR has certainly done. And maybe this is foretelling a weakening of Twitter in a way that they may be really shooting themselves in the foot here, that if a lot of organizations now take the view that we don't like the way you're labeling us, maybe we'll operate on different platforms. It could be Twitter that's the big loser in the long run.
Okay, this has been a fascinating conversation. Mr. Cecil Rosner, Vice President of the Canadian Association of Journalists, thanks so much for your perspective tonight.
You're welcome. Thanks.